Alright, welcome back to the Grease Goblins Rereads channel. Today's video, we're going to be doing Tyrion VIII, A Clash of Kings. And I wanted to say, the Game of Thrones reread has ended on the channel. Again, I did complete this series a little while ago, and that's why we're already on A Clash of Kings. But I did want to say, if you've been watching that series and you got to the end of it, thank you. It was a great project for me. It's something that, again, went through a lot of phases of life in that series. So again, a little shout out to that series and the people that watched that. But let's continue forward as we dive into A Clash of Kings. So Tyrion VIII is a really interesting chapter because a lot of the other chapters are moving the plot forward. We're having Tyrion play the political game, all this kind of stuff. Here, this is one of those chapters that I think is probably one of the weaker ones for Tyrion, even though I still think it's a good one. This chapter really is just reacting to the news of the Catelyn chapters, and then kind of pushing forward and foreshadowing the future of this plotline and of the series. It's not like a groundbreaking chapter or anything. It's a very short chapter. It's basically one council meeting. So let's not waste any time. Let's dive into page 397, and we start with Varys giving a report that Renly was murdered in his camp. There are multiple rumors about what is going on, but Varys reports that his throat was cut cleanly by a blade that sliced through armor and bone effortlessly. Cersei demands to know who did it, but Varys says too many conflicting rumors make it impossible to know the truth. And that is the case. Think about all of the confusion that we saw in the last Catelyn chapter with Renly's death. Some people might harbor this rumor that, yeah, what Catelyn says, that it was some sort of Stannis shadow magic thing. Other people are going to blame it on Brienne, and even furthermore, the people will blame it on a faceless man or some sort of Stannis assassin. Varys cannot be sure. There's too many rumors, and he wasn't actually there. So, of course, Cersei wants to know who actually did it, but in a lot of ways, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter who killed Renly. Renly's now out of the way. He recounts various claims: a knight of Renly's Rainbow Guard, Stannis using a magic sword, or a mysterious woman, possibly a spurned maid, a camp follower, even Lady Catelyn Stark. I mean, again, there's just so many different things, and even, like, some of these are like the same person, right? Like a spurned maid is Brienne, but also a knight of the Rainbow Guard is also Brienne. Cersei grows angry at the speculation and scolds Varys for wasting time. And it's so crazy to me because how is Varys wasting their time? He's the one informing them that Renly did die. This is huge news. It doesn't really matter who killed Renly. And Varys reminds her she pays him for such information, but she warns him to stick to the truth or risk being removed from the council. Nervously, Varys jokes that if Cersei and Tyrion kept removing people, the council will be empty. Of course, with people like Janos Slynt being gone and Pycelle not being at the council anymore, it's growing thinner and thinner. As we get into page 398, Littlefinger also jokes that the realm could do with fewer counselors. Varys playfully warns he could be next on the chopping block. We see a little bit of this Varys and Littlefinger rivalry that's not as present in the book series as much as it is in the show, like those added scenes where they're talking about the climb of, right, trying to get to the throne and of power and it being chaos. We don't see those kind of things in the book. Like, there definitely could be happening off the page. We just don't know of them. But it's interesting where you look at Littlefinger and Varys, they're so different because they have a lot more value than people like Pycelle and Janos Slynt. Varys, somebody that knows all this information for Tyrion, and Littlefinger is somebody right now that's just, it seems like it's too dangerous to be removed from the council. They don't know, especially Tyrion, because Tyrion thinks about this in one of his previous chapters, how much power does he have? Like, how many people does Littlefinger have in his pocket? So they're very valuable, and so both of them aren't really taking this necessarily that seriously. Cersei continues to threaten Varys about this, and Cersei's just losing patience. She wants to know what is happening. And Littlefinger suggests Renly's death might be a clever ruse. Varys says if so, it fooled even him. Again, it's not. If it's coming in from all these different sources, you're hearing all these different accounts, but they all allege that Renly is dead, it most likely is. Now, what I think is a little more interesting is this foreshadowing by George to another Baratheon feigning death? Stannis seems to be possibly making this sort of plan where he's going to say that he's dead, right? And we see this when he's given the mission to Justin Massey about putting Shireen on the throne. He says, even if you hear that I'm dead, continue on with your mission. That could be some foreshadowing to Stannis feigning death later on in the series. Tyrion concludes that Stannis must be behind the killing as he gains the most, though he regrets the Baratheon brothers didn't destroy each other in battle. See, that's the best case scenario, is that Renly and Stannis do go to battle, they bloody each other up, even if Renly beats Stannis quite easily, at least bloodied him up a little bit. But the thing is, Tyrion's correct. Just look at who is to gain here. Like, yes, you can possibly see some way that maybe Brienne, if you didn't know her, could have killed Renly because she loved him, but Renly didn't really love her back. And like you could maybe make the argument that it makes sense as a rumor, but again, let's be honest. Stannis is the person that gains from all of this. Varys reports that most of Renly's army remains at Bitter Bridge, and many knights and lords who marched to Storm's End have now joined Stannis. The Florents, led by Lord Alliser, were the first to submit as others followed. So what we're going to see here is that many of the Storm Lords go to Stannis' cause, but most of the Reach does not, as it's pointed out that not all lords bent the knee. Loras Tyrell, Randall Tarley, and Mathis Rowan among them did not bend the knee. So you're seeing kind of a split in Renly's camp. Some people are going to go to Stannis because he is the last Baratheon in their eyes in terms of a male claimant, and he is the rightful person. Even if they were going for Renly before, they need a king to follow. And so you're still going to go to Stannis rather than go to Joffrey. Now, the Tyrells are in a different camp of that. They are not loyal to the Baratheons. They are looking for the best political gain. And now that Renly has just been killed by Stannis allegedly, people like the Tyrells are not going to want to back Stannis. They're going to be looking for somebody else. And the candidates right now are very limited. The candidates right now for the Tyrells are really Robb. Again, Robb is not married at this point yet. So Robb Stark is a fairly decent option, but also Joffrey, because Joffrey's not married yet. He's betrothed to Sansa, but that can always be broken. So right now, if you're the Tyrells, you're probably pissed off that Renly is dead, but you're kind of sitting here going, okay, let's play the field, not join any one side. But with this also being said, Storm's End is still held against Stannis by Sir Courtney Penrose, who refuses to surrender without seeing Renly's body. And this is the issue, because Renly's corpse has mysteriously disappeared, likely taken by someone. Notably, we know it was Loras who takes his body. So there's a couple of interesting things, right? Sir Courtney Penrose is actually helping out the Lannisters quite a lot. He is maybe stalling them for a little bit of time. We know what's going to happen to him, but even, a sizable amount of time, just a couple days or whatever, is going to buy the Lannisters a lot of time, because now Renly and Stannis are not infighting. They're going to be going against the Lannisters. Stannis is going to be going against them. So as long as Storm's End is held against Stannis, he can't really march on King's Landing. A fifth of Renly's knights left with Sir Loras instead of serving Stannis, and Loras reportedly went mad with grief upon seeing Renly's body and killed 3 of Renly's guards in a rage, including Emyn Coy and Robar Royce. This is the same Robar that was pretty heroic. He was somebody that helps Catelyn and Brienne, and he was killed for it. It's one of those things where we look at Loras, and Loras of the television show is more kind of gallant. We don't see him doing these horrible actions. This is pretty terrible. Renly killing innocent men that had nothing to do with Stannis' death, any of that idea, and Loras kills them. It's something that Jaime's going to bring up later on in the story. It shows that Loras is still a young, man. He is somebody trying to become a man, and he's still acting out on these emotions and things like that. And we know that Loras and Renly had a thing, and so definitely seeing your lover dead at such a young age is definitely going to be something very difficult to deal with. Tyrion cynically thinks it's a pity Loras didn't kill more. Tyrion just wanting Loras to kill as many good men as possible. But that gets us into page 399. Varys says that Sir Loras is likely heading to Bitter Bridge, where his sister Margaery and many of Renly's now kingless soldiers are gathered. The loyalty of these soldiers is uncertain. Some serve lords who now follow Stannis. Again, like I said, really the main bulk majority of Stannis' support will be from the Stormlands, not from the Reach. Tyrion sees the opportunity, though, because if you're this large force, like I talked about, who are you going to back? You have to back somebody. Staying out of the war doesn't seem necessarily to be a good move either. And so Tyrion is seeing it. If he can win over Loras Tyrell, he can possibly gain the support of the Tyrells and the Reach as a whole, which would be a huge boost. The Tyrells and the Lannisters are the richest houses in Westeros. They command the most men. If the Tyrells and Lannisters get together, likely the war is over. And Tyrion is seeing that. He reasons that although they've pledged to Stannis, they didn't back him initially, so their loyalty may be shallow. Agreed, right? That's the whole thing. All of these men that are going to Stannis are going to Stannis not because of love of him, because there is no other option. And they might, fear him because of what happened to Renly. Cersei doubts the Tyrells would prefer Joffrey, but Tyrion suggests offering them compelling reasons, gold reasons, as Littlefinger puts it. Give them incentive, right? Give them a reason and kind of break it down for them. If they marry Joffrey, well, you're on the throne now. And maybe you'll get monetary gain from it, all this type of stuff. Varys mockingly protests the idea of buying nobles, but Littlefinger says lords are easier to buy than chickens if gifts are offered in the right form, titles, honors, and lands. And yeah, this is how it's done. Alliances are formed by giving things up, or having both sides gain something. So the Lannisters from this alliance would gain, more than likely, an ability to win the war. Whereas the Tyrells gain, well, they're going to be on the throne with Joffrey. They're going to gain certain titles and certain things. Loras is going to become part of the Kingsguard. There is basically bribing going on, but it's just in the form of different things that is not looked at as like dishonorable. Tyrion believes simple bribes may sway minor lords, but not Highgarden itself. Highgarden is going to need something huge. Littlefinger agrees and emphasizes that Loras is the key, his father's favorite child despite having older sons. Loras is the one that gets all of the glory. He's winning all these tournaments. He's this splendid knight that half the realm's in love with. So, yeah, if you can win Loras to your side, you should win this. You should have the Tyrells in your pocket. And you guys also think, the Tyrells hate Stannis. That's going to really help when you're trying to get them in your alliance, because two people that may not be friends but have the same enemy can very easily become allies. Tyrion proposes using marriage, just as Renly did, to secure the Tyrell alliance, which is a great move. It's exactly what the Tyrells were looking for with Renly. They got with Renly because he was going to be the king. He had the power to do so, right? It's the same idea of why they were trying to marry Margaery to Robert, is to get on the throne. Varys instantly sees the plan to wed Joffrey to Margaery Tyrell. Though Margaery is slightly older than Joffrey, Tyrion finds the match politically perfect. And he's completely right. It's a perfect marriage. If we don't see what ends up happening in the next book with things like, the Purple Wedding and Tyrion killing Tywin, all this stuff, this is the perfect route to making a peace in this war. Cersei is the only one to object to this, though, noting that Joffrey is already betrothed to Sansa Stark. Tyrion dismisses the Stark match as unhelpful, given Sansa's status as a daughter of a dead traitor. And this is interesting, right? Because Cersei is somebody that was forced into a political marriage, and she thinks about how awful that was. She is thinking about this more from a personal level than from a political level, and that's something that Cersei does quite a lot. But you got to think about it from this point of view. Like Tyrion says, Sansa is a useless hostage right now in terms of value, in terms of gaining the North, right? Because right now, Robb Stark is alive, Bran Stark's alive, Rickon Stark's alive. You all have all the main male claimants for the Starks are alive. Marrying Joffrey to Sansa does nothing. It doesn't gain the North to your help or any of that stuff. So right now, yeah, Sansa is somebody that is not that useful to them in terms of a marriage, right? In terms of a hostage for getting Jaime back, yes, but not in terms of marrying her to Joffrey. Littlefinger, who also pipes up at this, suggesting Joffrey would favor Margaery, who is both beautiful and bettable. It's interesting because Littlefinger wants this a lot. Littlefinger wants Sansa. So getting Sansa away from Joffrey is a great thing for him personally, as we see later on in the story. Tyrion agrees, thinking Joffrey would appreciate that, but Cersei insists Joffrey is too young to care about such things. I do think this is more of a motherly look on this. You never kind of want to see your child start thinking about those kind of things, but Tyrion in page 400, as we get into that page, is kind of right to remind Cersei that Joffrey is 13, the same age that Tyrion was when he married, and suggests he's old enough for more adult matters. And we're going to get to this here in a second, but think about it. In this world, we see a sped up version of people getting married and having sex. All those kind of things is very much sped up in this kind of medieval fantasy world. And Joffrey at 13 at this point is at that age. He is at that age where you start considering who is he going to marry. You think about the Targaryens. I think Jaehaerys and Alysanne, they marry very close to this age. So it's like it's not out of the realm of possibility. And they were even like betrothed much earlier than this. So in my opinion, I understand why Cersei's pushing back on this, but Tyrion is completely right given the situation they're in and the context of the world. Cersei scorns Tyrion's past marriage and insists Joffrey is of nobler character, which is very, very, very doubtful. Because think about Tyrion, think about what we just saw with Joffrey in Sansa's last chapter. Joffrey treated her horribly, but as Tyrion's going to point out, Joffrey, albeit being cruel, he ordered Sansa's dress torn off in public. Again, that's not noble behavior, but it also shows that Joffrey understands, having Sansa be stripped down to being naked is all this idea of it's shaming her, but also he seems like he has an interest in that. So it kind of explores a little bit of that, like, this just is not true. Cersei is seeing this from a mother's point of view and not necessarily the true point of it. And another thing, we also get seeing Tyrion mention up his last marriage is something we don't see in the show. The show does not bring up Tyrion's marriage at all. And so it's just a little reminder there. Tyrion then recalls trying to arrange a secret visit for Joffrey to Chatea's brothel, hoping a sexual experience might soften the boy and gain some gratitude. But the issue with that is Joffrey is never really alone. He's always with Sandor Clegane. Tyrion had asked Varys when the Hound might be absent, and this is a very interesting request. First of all, Joffrey getting sex and making him not an asshole, I don't think is going to work. But if you're Varys, because he also responds in a certain way, you're kind of thinking like, oh, that's a very weird request. You're trying to figure out when the king or how to get the king away from his loyal bodyguard. It's a very questionable thing. Varys responds coyly, warning that someone might think Tyrion wanted to harm Joffrey. But Tyrion insists he only wants the king's affection. And this is going to be some of those things like, again, we know that Varys understands Tyrion better, but when we get to this trial, it's a lot of that foreshadowing that people believe Tyrion could harm Joffrey, and that's why we get to the point where Tyrion is put on trial. There's a lot more that goes into it, but this is kind of that foreshadowing. Varys agreed to investigate, though war delays the plan. Again, this is not at the front of everyone's mind, having Joffrey have sex. It's more about, okay, are we going to live the war, the state of the castle, and of the kingdoms? Tyrion returns to the argument for a Tyrell marriage, stressing it might be the only way Joffrey lives to see his wedding night, which Tyrion is completely correct on. Even though Tyrion has plans, he has these grand ideas and these tricks, if the Tyrells don't help the Lannisters, it still might be over. Littlefinger supports the idea, saying Sansa offers only her body, which he very suspiciously describes. And yeah, if you didn't already think that Littlefinger was a P-file, we'll put it that way so YouTube doesn't hate this video, but you now know he is. He's just a weird dude. Littlefinger then says that Margaery instead brings Highgarden's power and 50,000 swords, which is he's completely correct, albeit he has ulterior motives. Varys gently appeals to Cersei's maternal side, but insists Joffrey must put the realm's need first. And this is what Cersei brings up that I really want to talk about because I think it's important. Cersei then rejects the idea, saying Joffrey is too proud to take what she calls Renly's leavings and will never agree to marry Margaery. But here's the point that nobody's really pointing out. Yes, you never want to force somebody on to Joffrey, but this is something that's been done for years, right? Years and years and years. Really, in the history of this world, arranged marriages are more likely than not. And so Joffrey getting to pick and choose who he's going to marry doesn't matter. Joffrey's not of age. As terrible as that is to say, I don't think arranged marriages usually work in this world, and they have to be done really effectively. And I just don't know how I'd feel about, those kind of marriages. I know a lot of customs in real world do that. I just think for me, I would not appreciate that. I'd like to be able to pick my own person. But in this story, Joffrey not approving of Margaery doesn't really matter. But that gets us into page 401. And Tyrion says this exact same thing. He reminds Cersei that while Joffrey can choose his bride at age 16, for now he must obey them. She as regent and Tyrion as hand. They have the power. Cersei grudgingly agrees to the proposal, but warns Tyrion that Joffrey must like Margaery. And we know Margaery's going to be able to do that. Margaery is described within the books as being very attractive. She's somebody that's able to manipulate men at least somewhat well. We don't know to the extent, because in the show we got a much different picture, especially with Natalie Dormer being a lot older than Margaery is in the book. But we saw a lot more of an attention on Margaery. In the book, we don't really get that. We only see that really through Cersei's eyes and sometimes through like Tyrion and Sansa's eyes. But here, we know Margaery and Joffrey are going to work until the Purple Wedding anyway. Tyrion then raises the question of who should deliver the marriage offer to Sir Loras at Bitterbridge. He says the envoy must be highborn and persuasive, not someone like Bronn or Shaga in terms of like his sellswords or whatnot. Cersei suggests that Sir Jacqueline Bywater should go, but Tyrion rejects him, saying the envoy must have authority to negotiate and act quickly. And also, Sir Jacqueline Bywater is not really a politician. Like, he's not somebody that you would look at as being, oh yeah, this person's going to make the alliance that could make or break the Lannister power. Cersei then proposes sending Tyrion himself, noting that as hand he speaks with the king's voice, which this is a good move by Cersei. Cersei wants Tyrion gone, but in a lot of ways this is a good move if you're Cersei. Tyrion is somebody that you would trust to negotiate with other people. Now, people might discriminate against Tyrion, saying, this is the person you sent to treat with us, is this dwarf or imp person. But on the flip side, Tyrion is the hand of the king. He is very good at political maneuvering and alliances and things like that. But we know it's really because Tyrion has all the power and Cersei is starting to feel maybe a little bit boxed in. Tyrion suspects she wants him gone from King's Landing and deflects, saying the queen might be better suited to arrange her son's marriage. It's a good deflection from Tyrion as well, because Cersei, I personally don't think Cersei would make a good envoy at all, but it is making more sense. Like, oh, well, this is your son's marriage. You're the one making all this, effort about it and all this stuff. Maybe you should be the one that does it. But instead, she insists that Joffrey needs her close. Then at this, Littlefinger offers to go instead, saying he's not royal blood, so not a valuable hostage, is familiar with Loras and skilled in negotiation. And this is where really everything folds into place. Tyrion knows the answer is Littlefinger. There is no other option. Who else is a good politician that is willing to go? They just don't have any other options. And albeit we know Littlefinger is going for ulterior motives, for rewards and riches of that nature, Tyrion is thinking, he doesn't trust Littlefinger, but he sees no better option. If he leaves, his work in King's Landing could unravel. Tyrion knows he can't leave, or else really the castle is doomed. King's Landing will fall. He warns that the road to Bitterbridge is dangerous, and Stannis is likely trying to sway Renly's former supporters as well. It's a dangerous move for Littlefinger, but it's a very high, gain reward if you can do it. Littlefinger jokes that he fears sheep more than shepherds, but agrees an escort would be wise. So, this is so important that if you're Tyrion, you're Cersei, you have to send some sort of force with Littlefinger. Because at this point, you need him to get there, and you need this to work. This is the war. This is the biggest climax. This is the biggest turning point. If the Joffrey and Margaery alliance is cemented, it is the biggest turning point of the war. Getting into page 402, Tyrion agrees to send 300 gold cloaks with Littlefinger, but Littlefinger negotiates for more, 20 knights, 20 squires, and ends up securing the full request. He insists that a knightly entourage is essential to impress the Tyrells, which I do believe is true. The same thing I brought up for Tyrion going there and maybe them discriminating against him because of his looks and appearances, all that stuff is going to be important to the Tyrells. So bringing the best looking force is going to be important for someone like Littlefinger trying to negotiate with them. Littlefinger also wants to include Sir Horace and Sir Haber Redwine, the hostages that are right now with Cersei, as this could be a really big win of getting Lord Paxter Redwine on their side. It's a great move by Littlefinger. It's a show of goodwill between the Crown and the Tyrell force, and the Tyrell faction, especially with Paxter Redwine. Cersei objects, calling Redwine a traitor who stayed neutral only to protect his sons, which is true, but here's the thing. If you're trying to now make an alliance with that faction, you have to give up things. You have to show that there's some sort of trust between the two factions. And Cersei's just not seeing that. Again, this is a lot of her pretty small-scale thinking, her really only blinded by her own personal motivations and not political stuff. Littlefinger continues arguing that Renly is dead and Redwine might be won over now. And so what we see here is actually a very clever idea from Tyrion as he does a compromise. As Cersei continued to insist holding the twins is the surest way to get the Redwine loyalty, Tyrion comes up with the idea to send Sir Haber back, but keep Sir Horace as a subtle message, saying, "We're giving you one. This is an arm of our trust, giving it to you, Sir Paxter Redwine, but we're keeping the other one, just in case, you don't fully go with us." Cersei does accept this, and Littlefinger requests swift horses, ample gold for gifts, and an official document granting him full authority to negotiate the marriage and related deals. All of this is just customary, right? You're going to want to butter up the Tyrells, but you also need to give Littlefinger authority. He asks for it to be signed by Joffrey and all the council members with their seals. Tyrion reluctantly agrees. Tyrion knows he has to do it, but it doesn't make him feel any better. It's the same kind of scenario that Ned found himself with Littlefinger. The same idea of there's nobody else you can turn to. Littlefinger is the person. Littlefinger makes himself so vital. That's why he's never killed. It's why Tyrion doesn't have him killed, because Littlefinger is so vital to all of these things, and you don't know how much power he truly has. Same idea. Tyrion has to trust Littlefinger with this, and it does work out. So Tyrion is viewed better because it does work out, but this very easily could have gone wrong as well. So, again, if you're looking at the Tyrion and Ned situation, they're both very similar, except with Tyrion, Littlefinger has much more to gain with going with Tyrion than he ever did with Ned. There's your difference. As Littlefinger prepares to depart before dawn, he hints at wanting a reward for his efforts, and Varys mocks him lightly, saying Joffrey is sure to be grateful. And Cersei cuts to the point and asks directly what reward Littlefinger wants. And we know what this is going to do, as he's going to kind of go back to what Tyrion had offered him earlier. As we get into page 403, Littlefinger departs with a sly smile, saying he'll think of a suitable reward later, and leaves casually as if heading to a brothel. Tyrion notes the heavy fog and poor traveling conditions, not envying Littlefinger's journey. But the only thing I'll say about Littlefinger's journey, he's running away in a lot of ways from the danger, right? Whereas everybody else is sitting in the castle awaiting Stannis to attack at some point. He instructs Varys to fetch parchment and quill for the official documents and to wake Joffrey for the needed signatures. The council meeting ends in the early gray hours as Varys leaves swiftly while Tyrion and Cersei linger. Cersei asks about Tyrion's chain that he's been building, and he says it's growing and that they should be grateful that Sir Courtney Penrose is stalling Stannis at Storm's End, which is completely true. We know this to be the case. It gives Tyrion much longer time to prepare. Cersei then surprisingly praises Tyrion, admitting she misjudged him and thanking him for his help. This is very suspicious. This chain was something that Tyrion basically had to go behind Cersei's back to do. Cersei has disregarded it at every point. Why now all of a sudden is she being nice to Tyrion? That's never really happened throughout this entire story so far, so why is it happening now? Tyrion then responds with a sarcastic smile, saying she's said nothing needing forgiveness. They share a rare laugh, and then Cersei unexpectedly kisses Tyrion on the brow. Now, this is something we know Tyrion likes, because Tyrion has this weird lust after his sister, but this shocks Tyrion. This is something that Cersei's never done before, or at least never done since maybe her childhood. But at this, what is going on? Why is Cersei so happy? Why is she all of a sudden treating Tyrion well? Tyrion, shocked, remarks to Bronn that he can't recall her kissing him since childhood, back when Jaime had dared her to do it. Bronn jokes that she's finally noticed Tyrion's charm, which we obviously know is not the case. Tyrion doesn't believe it, as he's convinced Cersei is plotting something, and tells Bronn to find out what, as he hates surprises. We know this to be the case. Cersei is definitely plotting behind Tyrion's back, and it's why, in a lot of ways, Cersei has been a lot nicer to Tyrion. Not only like the beginning of the chapter when the meeting was going on, but also at the end. It's a very suspicious way to end it. But again, the reason I think that I'm a bit lower on this Tyrion chapter, even though I still think it's a good chapter, of course, it is one of those where it's like, it's not a ton of political maneuvering by Tyrion. It's a lot of like face value stuff, just setting stuff up for the future. Solid chapter, again, of course, above a lot of the Bran, Dany, and Jon chapters we've got in this book. But again, I think of the Tyrion chapters, one of the weaker ones. But thank you guys all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.